Grief is such an overpowering emotion, especially after losing someone so close to you. It can take months, years, even decades to get back to normal, if that's even possible after experiencing a significant loss. This podcast was created to help you move through and release the emotions, allowing you to heal the hurt and begin living again. Listen in as I chat with medical professionals, grief workers, and people who have first-hand experience in losing a loved one, what their experience has been, and what they did to help heal themselves and those around them. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I believe there is always a silver lining if you're willing to look. Welcome to the Release Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Release Grief Podcast. Today I have the absolute pure pleasure of bringing on Elba Crone. Ooh, and I hope I said it right. She is a spiritual coach and founder of Awaken the Gratitude. And yes, we all need that in our life, especially when we're going through grief, because it is absolutely fucking hard to find gratitude when you've just experienced grief. So I am really excited for this podcast. I'm really excited for all the wisdom that she's going to be dropping on here to help those of us, like me included, to keep looking for the gratitude, to wake up and choose the gratitude each and every day, even when we don't really want to. So welcome, Elba. I'm so excited you're here. Yeah, that was
Like,
quite the intro, right?
yeah, I love it. I'm like super excited. It's so funny because all the emotions that are coming up right now, just hearing what you just said, I'm in the brink of tears right now because that's how powerful your podcast is. It's a sacred, safe space, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Where I'm allowed, I feel like, yes, I can be myself and not be like it's a judgment-free zone here.
Absolutely.
And
This is this podcast was specifically designed for guests to be able to come on here and share their story in their words and their emotions, and to just maybe potentially reach someone else who's going through the same thing that they are, or maybe not the same thing, but like on the same journey, that's connecting with them and that emotional energy that they're bringing. And so absolutely, I don't judge anyone that comes on here because I don't know what you've been through. I have no idea the challenges that you faced and the challenges that you will face and how you get through them, because it's different for everyone. So
and so
absolutely.
I am just a brink of tears because your judgment-free zone here, make it sacred for us, your guests, to share our stories, and then to add something like grief,
Mm,
because we all know what grief causes. And if I could make that, transform that grief into joy through the power of gratitude, I'm excited.
yeah,
I'm excited because it's
absolutely.
possible.
So talk to me and tell me a little bit. So I was reading your notes. I just briefly caught up on your notes. And you talked about the grief of your children when they were smaller. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So my children today are, I have one adult and one is 18, just became an adult. And we know that's not really true.
No.
He's still in high school. So, but I have a daughter who is 30 years old. And so when I shared that with you, there was this 10-year window when my children were small that I was in that hustle and grind. Remember back in the day, there was this talk about gotta hustle, gotta hustle, gotta hustle. And so I was in that state to hustle and grind at all costs for this why, which the outside and societal American culture had caused me to believe. And for that exchange, it cost my time with my children, money, and energy.
Yeah.
Because not only did I hustle with my time, I of I hustled my effort and my money.
Hmm.
And when I look back, I look at pictures, and there are times I'm like, well, not anymore like I used to, but I remember the grief of that lost time, money, energy. And I
I
was in my 30s during that time.
yeah, man, that so we haven't even touched on that on this podcast yet at all. And a lot of people think, oh, well, that's just running a business. And I would agree to a certain extent. The issue that I have is as women, we are the providers generally for our children. The men, and I don't care, we're not going to get into the patriarchy system. We're not going to get into the male and female roles and different things like that. But generally speaking, the women's, take care of the children and the men provide, right? And I know for a time when my husband, I mean, when we were younger, we were just married, whatever, we have 5 children, I decided to start a business. My business was cleaning out foreclosed homes back in 2008. When everything was closing down, people were losing their houses left and right. And I was called to go in and clean these houses out, change the locks on them, and just get them ready for the real estate agents to resell. Okay. Not a glamorous job by any means, but that was my job. In the meantime, my husband, who was the primary financial giver for our family, was still working, 40, 60, 70 hours a week. And he was in the military, the Army Reserves at the time. So sometimes he was gone. Like I couldn't get a hold of him, obviously, because he was gone for, 3 days a month, 5 days a month out of the summertime, whatever. So it was mainly me having to manage our house, our children, our finances, all the things. And so with that job that I opened, or that career, that business that I opened, it was for 2 years. And so when they sent me an order in the email, I had 24 hours to go secure this property.
Mm.
So I would get these emails 7 days a week.
Mm.
So you can see that I'm constantly gone securing them. But then once I get the bid, I want to say like 5 days to get it cleaned out.
Mm.
That's from beginning to end. And so if there's a lot of stuff in there, you're hustling, you're working 12-hour days, right? And these aren't obviously local job sites to you. It's at least an hour away down into the cities or somewhere like that. And then in the summertime, we had lawn care and maintenance that was separate from the other two. And then in the wintertime, we had snow removal and plowing, which is separate from the other two as well. And so I was gone, and there's a period of time, like my kids are like, Mom, do you remember this? I'm like, I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything that my kids have. So my son had broken his collarbone, and because I didn't take him to the hospital, my mom did. I don't remember him breaking his collarbone.
Mm.
I hear him tell me this, or there's pictures that come up, and I'm like, when was this? Where was I at? Like, what was I? And they're like, Mom, you were working. Mom, you were working. Mom, you were working. And so I understand what you're saying. So for me to have that business at that time, and my kids were little, like, I wouldn't say little, but they were younger. So the youngest was, I think, in second grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so the oldest one would have been in like ninth grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like that whole time period was just like ripped out. So for 10 years, that is insane. Like you're missing most of their childhood completely.
Completely.
And
And
so
that's the grief.
it is grief. As a mother, you're like, well, damn it, I feel like a failure because I wasn't there. I was providing for our family. I was doing these things, but I wasn't providing the emotional, mental, physical, support for our children, you know. Man.
And there's some repercussions with that. Like my daughter, there's some mother wound in there.
Oh, yeah.
And my son, there's mother wounds. And for the life of me, even I, as a spiritual life coach, but to them, I'm not a life coach. I'm their mother. I'm their mommy.
They're
And
immune
that's,
to it.
yeah. So that doesn't, they don't see me in any other light. And so that mother wound that my children have, that's where forgiveness play a huge role for me,
Right.
for myself, and in in my prayer that they one day will find help and heal through that and forgive me too,
Yeah.
you know, because that's the repercussion, because they think I didn't care. They
Yep.
didn't, I didn't, they
You didn't
think
want to be around them.
I didn't want, and if I didn't want to be around them, is that I was depleted of energy and I had none. I was overweight. I was, not only was I doing that business, but I had a job that was 40 hours. And
Oh, wow.
the job itself is 40 hours, but you got like 2 hours before and 2 hours after that. Then you have dinner and then you're out there prospecting sales. At that time, thank goodness there wasn't social media, but there was networking. So you had to go out there, not like today where we have Zoom.
Right.
So there was a lot of energy put out. And yet at the same time, I remember every year my daughter being Girl Scout, trying to sell the Girl Scout cookies and doing apple pie parties and cookie parties and Christmas, and to the point that I used to, thank goodness I've been healed, but even had trauma, Christmas trauma,
Yeah.
because I wanted to have this ideal environment for my kids. And then interesting, a couple of Christmases, but I remember one Christmas, I literally lost my mind because it's funny, you just happen to drink a coffee cup. I told my husband in Macy's in at Dublin Mall, I said, I don't even remember the mall because malls are not popular these days. But went Macy's and I said, honey, I just want this teacup. This one right here. This one. Not this one, right? But I was nice. I said, this one. When I did not get that teacup, I screamed bloody murder because I was like, I just asked for one thing and you could not get that one thing. And it wasn't about the cup, it's about how can I get in return for what I didn't know, but what seemed I lost time, energy, and money. What can I get in return
Right.
that loss?
It was also being heard. You weren't heard. And I think that as moms and wives, we go through, like, we give a lot. And I don't want to ever downplay that the fathers don't give a lot too,
Yes.
because
Mhm.
it's a sacrifice for them to go out to work, 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week, whatever, to provide a financial stability for their family, and then to come home and the wives think that they're doing nothing, but they didn't have to take care of the kids, they didn't have to do this. No, they had to go and be away from the family and try to make money, and survive in that type of an environment with bosses that they may or may not get along with, coworkers they may or may not get along with, the job they may or may not like, to be able to support the family, so that the moms can, be at home with the kids, because, we're natural givers, we're natural, supporters. So
Yeah,
I don't want to take away from the fathers at all.
right.
But
Right.
as mothers, we give and
Mhm.
give and give to the kids, and we have the kids sucking off of us as well. And it sounds so harsh, but kids are natural, like, they take. They're natural salesmen at birth. Like, the cry, I'm going to teach them, I'm going to train them that I want milk at this time. I want to be held at this time. I need to be burped at this time. Oh, whoops, I did a doo-doo. Clean me.
Yeah.
All these things. And so it just takes, and it wears and it wears and it wears. And then as a mom, you feel like you're not heard because they're toddlers. They don't really hear you. They're little, they don't really hear you.
I love how you said not be heard because in that process, Not only did I lose my time, money, energy, but because our cultural, I lost my voice too.
You lost yourself,
Yeah, I lost
your
myself. I
whole
lost
self.
everything, everything. And I think too, I'm just gonna promote this book here, but
A Radical Awakening.
yeah,
Who is it
love
by?
the Dr. Shafali.
Okay.
And I love what she says in there. And I had to reflect because of this topic we're having about mother and loss and time and children. She talks about how when we have children, we embrace the creative power that we have. We
Hmm.
might, some of us might, I think today, women today are equipped better than we were. Every generation is always equipped better. You know,
Right.
technology helps that. And so, speaking now, some women might not be totally equipped for whatever reason. However, she talks about embracing this divine power that was given to us as a woman to have that intuitive, instinct, motherly nature that's in us. And we don't have to have children to have that, it's innate in us.
Yeah.
So that's where we take care of our parents. We become caretakers or nurses or nurturers. We're just not, it's our natural distinct. And and we embrace it, but somehow we are believed that it's a minute thing. And so we don't take, I, she talks about women doesn't take advantage of that divine power that's innate in us to use it to our advantage. And when
Right.
she said that, when I read that, it's like, wow, I remember when I had my baby and I remember the love of holding my children. I remember that. Like if I'm having a bad day, I'll literally like just sit there and remember that feeling uh, to calm my body down, the grief, calm the grief down, and say, hey, remember this. And that's where that role of gratitude plays a huge role, because if we can think back all the times that that we did spend with our children
Hmm.
and be grateful for that, that increased the value greater than the grief itself.
Yeah.
It increased the value. And that's how one way of transforming that grief, by adding value to the time that you did have the
Yeah.
Christmas parties, the Girl Scout cookies, the first dance, the high school dances, and all of those things. So yeah, Easter egg hunt, cookie party, when I sit there and write that, intentionally think about that, or reminisce with my children, then it eases that pain of grief. Grief is also a gift,
It is.
because it's in that grief we can find a light and lesson and love. And through a tool like gratitude, the power of gratitude, that's how we can find it. Because one of the things I know is I know not what not to do. And as a woman at my age, as a crone, today I'm a crone at this ageless young woman, 51 years old, going to be 52 next month. I am physically, biologically considered crone. And
Hmm.
with this crone, I embrace the gift that comes with it. Even that's another grief process. Every time we go through our biological changes in our bodies, in our identity, like you're single, and maybe you got have this new partner, and in that partner you have a new identity, and then when you have children you have another new identity, you have this career, it's another, there's a lot of identities. And as a crone, I have this fresh new identity that I embrace. I embrace it because there's so much freedom at this age, so much freedom and so much, what I want to say, wisdom
Yeah.
because of all the grief.
And the acceptance.
Yes. And I'm at a place today where yes, I have awakened a gratitude, but my heart has been leaning. So I have gratitude here. And now I've have awakened the sacred woman. And the awakened sacred woman is about a woman, like we were talking earlier about being a badass bitch, as a divine feminine woman. Tap into our divinity. Or a queen who's tapped into her divinity, who lives
Hmm.
a soft life and not a hard life, who
Hmm.
attracts, like I told you earlier, you have this magnetic attraction. To be a magnetic attraction, to receive rather to give or allow others to take, but to receive. And so my mission today is to help women, especially in that age group with small children going to their 40s, to not lose 10, 15 years like the way I have, but to accelerate the process quicker so that they can fulfill their purpose sooner
Yeah.
than later.
Yeah. That I love that because when they tell you about entrepreneurship, they tell you all the glossy highlights of it. You get to work for yourself, you get to create your own hours, you get to do this, you get to do that, travel when you want because you can work from anywhere in the world. They don't tell you, in which it should be, I think, written, on big billboards on New York Times Square, is that for every highlight, there's a low light. And the low lights consist of you do have to take time away from your family. You do have to use resources that you might not have thought of using financially or whatever. Um, yes, you can work from anywhere in the world, but only if you have a Wi-Fi signal or you bring your own internet, one of the two. Or, like all of these things, yes, you can work, but are you it's a sacrifice. You're giving, are you willing to sacrifice over here to get over here, whatever one you're wanting to do. And I don't think that that is clearly explained a lot in entrepreneurial realms. It's all about, look, I made $10 billion in 2 seconds. You want to know my secret? Like, that's classic. But they don't
Very.
tell you all the sacrifices that they took or had to take or did to get to that point to be able to make that, or the time lapse. That's another big one. Yes, most of these people are successful because, they've been in it for 10 years. What did they sacrifice in those 10 years? Time with their families, time with their spouses, you know, just time. They sacrificed time in themselves.
Remember, I just said that um, earlier that, you know, well, here's this. Oh, that in every grief, there's a light lesson, love.
Hmm.
Well, in 2016, I went into this emotional intelligence leadership training like a whole year.
Mm.
And then after that year, um, someone had told me, a professional woman said to me, Elba, the dedication you put in into this skill set, emotional intelligence, training and coaching, the hours you put in voluntarily equates to a master degree and beyond.
Hmm.
And so 2016 was all but training for myself. 2017, 18, that's when I did a lot of student intern coaching, mentoring. And because I was really good at what I was doing, even I didn't intend to be a coach. It's just they saw how I showed up. The Spanish industry had asked me if I would come into their centers and coach Spanish people. And so not only did I coach as a student coach here in Columbus, Ohio, but I also, as a student coach intern, I was coaching Spanish. I had to travel Detroit for 6 months, went down to Mexico a few times to mentor those down there at a high intense mentorship program there. I went to the deep heart of Mexico. Wasn't like Cancun, Tulum, where it's vacation. No, I went to the
What?
deep heart
You went
cartel.
to work when you went to Mexico?
I went to the deep. No kidding, I didn't even know, but I was in the deep, deep part of Mexico cartel. But I didn't know.
Right,
I had no idea. But I don't. I had no idea. I didn't. It looked normal to me.
right.
I fit in perfect, so it didn't bother me. But when they told me, I was like, really? Okay,
Well, thank goodness I made out alive.
right. So, but I did that and then came back to Columbus and I was asked approached if I would help build a Spanish in center for emotional intelligence. So I say all that to say to you that because of the work that I was putting in, I was I was working all the time or volunteering all the time because I really wanted to build the skill set with it, as a coach. I really, and that's my heart too, transformation. So I was creating a new career is what I'm saying. It got to the point that the transformational trainers, the veterans, had started to ask me if I would uh, partner with them, become a trainer, and they would send me forth all over Mexico and Colombia. And it sounded good. Oh, the opportunity. I said, honey, I didn't care my husband didn't work. I said, honey, you just stay home in Cancun, Tulum, because they're building. You stay there, and we'll keep our house in Ohio, and I'll just work on the weekends, and we'll I come home. And it was a glamorous, amazing opportunity.
Mhm.
And I remember those 10 years, and I said, no,
Was that the 10 years you were talking about?
no, 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 no. That was
Oh,
this
this was
was after
after.
the fact. And the light and lesson love that I learned from that experience, that when I had this opportunity, I turned it down because I didn't want to give up any more time than I had already.
Yeah,
It wasn't worth it anymore.
right.
The value of my time with my children had a greater value than having this career. A career is a career. I can create, my
Yeah,
passion can use a different vehicle. It ain't
correct.
not had to be this vehicle.
I love that. That is very poignant. Your passion can be a different vehicle, because it's still your passion. So it's however you choose it to be. I have a question though.
Mhm.
So when you were in that 10-year period, of the time loss with your children, you were doing coaching and stuff? Because you were working a 40-hour week job, and then you were building another business on the side. Was it the emotional intelligence stuff?
No, no, that was like way later. That was more a direct sales slash multi-level
Oh,
marketing
okay.
business.
So yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
So what was the trigger that you said, I am done with this? I'm missing, what was the trigger that made you say, I can't do this anymore?
It In that 12 years, I got to a place. You know how we say my cup is so full,
Yeah,
right? Right? My cup was so full of crap.
yeah.
And now
Okay.
it's starting to choke. And I start to become I didn't know this. Um, but I became curious. And when I say curious, I'm talking about my awakening started to happen and I started to become curious about my own self. Like, something is not aligning. And when I decided to look into myself
Mm.
versus looking outside, I saw how empty I really was, empty of my own self and filled with crap. And so I had a dream. I had a dream. And in my dream, I was I was at this event. I don't want to offend anyone, anyone who's watching, but
Okay.
I'm going to put it this way because everyone deserved this. Maybe someone's going through this. I was a very religious person, Christian person. And in this dream, in this dream, I wanted to, I felt like between the business I was under, the leadership I was under, and under this leadership of this church that I was under, no one, I wanted to take the two and harmonize and build something great. And they did not work with me, collaborate with me. But yet they wanted me to lead a team. They wanted to use my power and voice and passion that I know I had, but I was using it for someone else versus for myself. But I didn't know any better because I was a good girl.
Mm-hmm.
I was trained to be a good girl. I was conditioned to be a good girl. And I was a people pleaser. I wanted to be validated, whatever that cost. Even though later I found out, years later, I found out, even though it cost me my own integrity self. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't, not that I have an affair, but costing myself who I am under the hands or leadership of narcissism. And so I had a dream, literally had a dream, and I had this dream. I was at a church event, and I said, I heard myself as the observer saying, if I just walk through that door, I saw the door and I saw the light. If I walk through that door, I can escape. And so I saw the person or the pastor talking because he kept a close eye on me. Because everyone knew because of my passion that I was very influential. So they kept a close eye on that.
Yeah.
Literally took a close eye on that. And this even happened in the workplace. So in the dream, I saw them and I said, oh, wait a minute. Oh, he's talking to somebody else. This is my chance. So I walk like and escape. And in this dream, I escaped to the outfield. And then all of a sudden, I was in Brooklyn, New York, where I'm from. And there's this street, this park called Cypress Hills, where you literally walk up the hill. That's why it's called Cypress Hills. And I took off. And I said, if I just go up there in the woods, I can hide in there. And the pastor came out, the man came out. He goes, oh God. And I turned around like a movie and ran up the hill. And this is how powerful this dream was. He took his hand and he did like this to reach out. And in the dream, I can feel the pull and I can feel like the fighting. And I was on my knees. And I said, if I can just break through, just break through. If I can, if I don't give up, like in the dream. And finally, I broke through and his hand broke free. And
Mm.
that was the beginning of my transformation
And all because of a dream.
because of
But
that
it was
dream.
because of the pressures that you were feeling from these two, like the church and your work, your job, were colliding, correct?
The business, the direct sales business.
Oh, okay. The one that you were building after work. Okay, so the direct sales and the church were colliding within you.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's a pretty powerful dream. But
It,
it's so like it's so true. when you look inside yourself and you start to realize what fills you up and what drains you, like you have these emotional, like if even if you say a name, like it'll either light you up, you'll feel nothing, or it'll bring you down. Like,
And the thing is, like, even though I had this dream, but what caused this dream is because I finally had the confidence, or I don't want to say confidence, the courage to ask the church for this sale on this water treatment. And even though it costs, I had a cost, but my goodness, do you know how many thousands of dollars I invested in tithing?
yeah,
So I made this one ask, and I was like, it made me feel rejected. Like, oh, just go ask someone else, and not really put thought into it. That that was the last straw.
right.
That was the last straw on the camel's back when I made that ask and was rejected and not given a moment or consideration. And I thought no more, because at that time I had retired from the state where I was working, and I put in over $7,000 into tithing.
Yeah. How long had you
And
been with the church?
I was a member. I was always my background is Pentecost my whole life, but with that particular church, I was a member like 2 years, and I was like their outreach director.
Mm,
And so I invest a lot of time in
right.
being a good person. And this is not so that was a camelback, like that I was already curious. And we there was some clashes, and I'm like, okay. But when I made that ask and I couldn't be giving anything for it, not even a moment's time to be curious and ask, that was enough to say, that's it. I
Hmm.
need to find I need to find a way out. And I didn't know a way out, to honest,
Mhm.
until I had that dream.
And did you stop working for the sales company too?
Yeah,
Oh,
stop
wow.
showing. Mhm. So now in your questionnaire, I talked about forgiveness.
Hmm.
And so there was a lot of trauma between the two. And with the direct sales, I was with that team for 10 years.
Mm,
So I
wow.
was under this couple, I was under this narcissistic um, rule. The wife, I had no problem. It was the husband. Like, I would put out ideas, and the ideas were taken, and no recognition, wouldn't give me the time. But I poured in. I showed up. I invested a lot of money. Went to every trip, and so anyways, um, because of that grief I had suffered, and I went into that transformational training. It took me to go to Mexico because I couldn't, for the life of me, couldn't get over it. And even though it's transformed, now I I became my authentic self. But in my authentic self, I became conscious of all this shit that happened to me. I became aware of all that happened to me. I was like,
Yeah.
I know this is online. It's like, oh, oh, how do I handle this? Because I didn't know. And now I know the light switch has been on.
It's kind of shocking when it
It is.
happens, isn't it?
This is why people in 2020 went cuckoo, because the global pandemic forced the light on people, and it caused people to go cuckoo. And they rightfully so, because
Right.
I was cuckoo. And it took, so now that I became aware and conscious, either you retreat and go backwards, or you got to move forward. And when we're awakening and we're moving forward, you got to go through the shit. and
Yeah.
own your shit and not only claim your power, but own your shit. Because that's the problem with people have when they become awakened, they see all this stuff and no, especially Christian people, because we're told that give it to the Lord, give it to God, cast all cares. So guess what? I ain't own shit. So if I did something good, I give glory to God, right? I gave the glory to Him. So I didn't own any glory.
Yeah.
It's a co-creating thing because God don't get shit if I don't act on my shit,
That's right.
right? I don't get so I gotta act for Him to get glory. Therefore, I get glory too.
You're right.
So so then if I screwed up, I don't own that shit either because I ask Him for forgiveness, cast my sins to Him, and I'll be forgiven. And guess what? Because I cast all my shit to Him, guess what happens? I don't take responsibility and ownership of my shit. And so I do the shit over and over and over and come up for prayer over and over and say, help me, help me, help me. I'm just telling it like it is, my experience,
Right?
my trauma,
Yes.
right? So then what happened is because I became aware and conscious to these things, in leadership, it talks about responsibility. But how can you be responsible of anything if you don't own anything?
Right. You can't.
What's there to be responsible for if you don't own anything? It's
Right.
great that people want to own all the good things that they accomplish and achieve and done and the good
None of the
side they
bad.
like about
Yeah.
themselves. But when they know the shit that's not right, they don't want to own that shit either. But
Mm-mm.
if you want to become whole, people has to own all the good, all the bad, and all the ugly. And that's the only way one can be whole. And so when I owned my shit and became responsible for all of that, I didn't know I was under a lot of grief. Now
Mm-hmm.
that I own it, how can I be responsible for this grief that I have lost? I cost I lost money that cost my children vacation, cost my children's colleges, it cost my children's opportunity. When I talk about money, I'm talking about that money that I invest in both church and business. It cost my children's college, vacation, clothes, shoes, all kinds of shit. Telling my children, just wait, it'll get right, it'll get better, I promise you. So it took me to go all the way to Mexico in one of the trainings that I was mentoring leaders, leaders, coaching leaders, and thank God for my coach. My coach, I was staying with my leader, and I told him this, and he has one question, and he asked me, Elba, did you do your best? And I said, yes. He said, did you do your best with everything that you knew how to do and what to do? I said, yes. Then what more can you do than your best? I said, nothing. And he goes, then when he said that, I was like, oh, because I did my best. From what I was conscious of, I did my best.
Right.
That's the truth right there. So I had that resolve, but there was still this little residual that it would creep in every once in a while. And so I said, okay, I love our bodies. Don't you? Don't you love your body?
I do.
Because we
She's
might
been
not,
through a lot.
even though we might not be aware of a lot of shit that happens to us, but our body remembers.
Mm-hmm.
and our body will let us know, whatever way that looks like. And so my body did let me know. And I was like, shit, what now? And one of the things I didn't practice because I learned from a mentor that when you are grateful for the good and bad, there's no real need to forgive. But that's his perspective. And I accepted it. And so I avoided. And then it was enough for me. And so I was like, forgive. I had to look, I'm one of those, you know why I'm my excellent coach? This is a commercial. Because I study my shit. I
Mm-hmm.
study my shit and I work myself so that I can experience and learn and help others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes me an excellent coach. So I went and studied what is forgiveness? What is the etymology? What is the Webster Dictionary? What does Google say? What are some of the stories about forgiveness? And so I had a dream. I had a dream. And in this dream, this was last year, and this
Wow.
happened. I left in 2015. I had a dream. It's in my journal. And I had a dream. And in the dream, I saw the business direct sales couple, the husband, wife. And in the dream, I was the observer watching the character, watching myself as the character in the story. And there were like this Zoom, there's two windows. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there were like this two window or two rooms. And one room, I went in and saw the man. And the man, the husband, and myself, the character, were joyful. Like they were happy. And I looked at myself like, what's going on here? Like, why, why, why am I that happy? And why is he happy to see me? Like, what's going, okay. I was like, okay, well. And then the other room, which I knew was the wife. So I was anticipating as the observer and the character of myself. We're like, oh yeah, let's go see her. Yeah, me too. I can't wait. Let's go see her. Isn't that funny, our dreams? So
Mm-hmm.
I went to the other room and I saw the wife. When the wife looked at the character, which was myself, she was like this.
Oh.
And I said, what's wrong? And she had become a wretched, angry, bitter old woman. And I said, and the character was like, what's the matter? Why you're behaving this? Even I was like, why is she acting this way? I didn't have any ill will with her. I didn't have anything against her. Why is she offended by me? What did I do to offend her? What is that I do that she's angry? So I looked at the two as the observer. I started to look at the two and to figure out what's going on. And I realized at that moment, the distinction of the two was forgiveness. The husband I have forgiven, the wife I had not forgiven. And so it was not even about forgiving the wife, and it wasn't about forgiving the husband. It was forgiven and unforgiven. And what these two mirror back to me was what I looked like, the observer and the character, what forgiveness and unforgiveness look like.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness looked like joy and happy and gladness, and unforgiveness looked like an angry, bitter, old, wretched old woman. And she she was the thing about that is that with her, I, I wasn't angry at her, but she mirrored back to me what unforgiveness looked like. And so I had decided in the dream to forgive them both. Forgive everything, everything about the loss, everything, the loss. because I had to decide, did I want to have joy or did I want it to be old, angry, bitter, wretched woman? And
Right.
so I made a conscious decision in the dream to forgive. And this is the thing with forgiveness, is that people are at offense about forgiveness. And I get it. I understand that. So for you to give, what do you people need to ask? In order for you to give, ask yourself, what do you want in return? And in return, I wanted joy. And so for my forgiveness, in return, I receive joy. And so those 10 years, I have grief and joy. And that's what makes it beautiful. Grief and joy. You can't have joy without grief, and you can't have grief without joy. I had grief and had nothing but grief. But now I have grief and I have joy. And that's what makes me whole, healed, complete, and true to myself.
Right. Because you can't, you can't see the rainbow without the rain. It's very powerful because when you do have those dreams, and I have dreams every now and then, nothing quite like that one, but I'm sure mine are different in other various ways. But like, I have had dreams where I'm the observer and seeing myself and like, okay, I could have probably handled that one a little bit differently. But also just having the grace to know when your ish is not right and owning that ish, because that is super powerful, like especially in grief. Um, because I know that people use grief, as a crutch to continue or to act a certain way or to be a certain way or um say certain things that shouldn't be said or do certain things that shouldn't be done, because they're not, as you mentioned earlier, they're not dealing with the actual issue. They're going around it, and doing, trying to band-aid it or forget it or bypass it, and none of that stuff works. And it'll only work for a certain amount of time. And like another gentleman said on the podcast, he goes, your grief will always be there, whether you're willing to deal with it or not. But the quicker you deal with it, the quicker it'll like calm down and not be quite such a flare up. But the longer that you don't deal with it, the longer that you let it run amok in your life, let it keep brewing and festering, the harder it is to deal with it later. And let me be abundantly clear, if you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. It will not. It's never a pretty sight when that happens, because it'll always be every time you don't want it to happen. Not that there's ever a perfect moment for it, but grief is one of those things that just, I don't know, the more tools you have in the toolbox to be able to deal with it, I think the better that it is. And the better it is to navigate it.
I love that. The more you have tools, the more you can better navigate. Because I had, I used my tool with my coach.
Mhm.
I used the tool with gratitude, and I used the tool for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Because grief can, I love what you said about avoiding bypassing. Because what happens is, if we don't address it, it goes deeper and deeper, deeper, and it will take more tools to uproot that.
Right. Because it's like an onion. It's going to have many layers. And the more the onion grows, the more layers that the onion gets. And I just go back to gardening every time. It's just so wonderful for grief. And so when you pluck it out, it's going to have so many layers, but you peel the layers to get to the juicy goodness of the inside.
Yeah.
And that's just called self-awareness. Exactly what you're talking about earlier. Like introspecting into yourself, like, this is grief. why is this happening to me? And not necessarily why is it happening to me? Why am I feeling this way about it? What is causing these feelings? Am I so emotionally resistant? If it's something else, what is the grief that is surrounding it? The pain, the sadness? What is what are all the things? Finding them out, listing them, looking them up, thinking about them. Like you can't avoid it forever. I mean, I guess you can, but it's not going to be a very fulfilling life if you do, because things will break later on. Usually it's your mindset or your emotional bandwidth, or you get angry easier, or you keep repeating horrible, despicable patterns that you should be avoiding, yet you keep repeating them. And that's usually a cycle of, okay, what haven't I healed here? What haven't I done? Like, I am super guilty of these. So I am talking about myself here, just
Right.
in case anyone was wondering.
Right. I love it. This is what I love what you said. This this what makes it powerful, because we have the same experiences, but we have different approaches
Yeah.
on addressing these things. And for those who are still hanging on, listening to us having this conversation, you know, I want y'all to know that my spiritual life is is more beautiful than ever. I I remember journaling, I think it was 2021, one summer day, and I was just journaling, my gratitude journaling, and I heard a soft, still voice. And it said to my voice, like I heard it, I was in a dream, was writing, and I heard a soft, still voice right back here and said, "It's still me." And when I heard that, because I knew from my church days, what sound to me, the frequency of God, I heard that. I was like, oh, and I was elated and joyful that I have my true love back, what
Yeah.
I knew as God to be, my true love.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I had it back, it was just waiting patiently. And when I was still enough, healed just enough, I heard that soft, still voice. And today I have a beautiful relationship with my God self. I consider it God self,
Yeah.
or God of love, the love of God, where I fall in love, where where today I'm in love with love itself.
Yeah. You've come to peace with all the things that you've done, all the things that have been done to you. And just, yeah, there is a power in that, because if you can't be at peace with yourself, like my family thinks I'm insane. And I'm like, I love that you think I'm insane, because I think you're insane. So we're equal here. Because I can go for car rides 3, 4 hours long, and I am perfectly content to sit in my own thoughts. And most people, I didn't realize this, but most people aren't. They want music to distract themselves, or a podcast, or a book, or whatever it is. And I didn't realize that people didn't like to sit in their thoughts. They're like, no, why would I want to do that? I don't like those thoughts. I'm like, oh, okay, okay. So, and it's taken me a long time to get here. Don't get me wrong. I didn't just wake up and come out of the birth canal and be like, okay, let's just sit and think forever. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's taken me a very, very long time to be okay with my thoughts, to be okay with the voices in my head, which are guiding me and propelling me and creating new things, or I'm going over like products, services for my business, or how can I be a better person? What did I get from this last podcast? How can I apply that to meet myself in my life? Like, these are the thoughts that I think about. Um, Not necessarily like uh horrible thoughts or whatnot, nothing like that. But I've come to train my thoughts to
Mm.
be my happy garden.
Mm.
Like, and I feed it. I feed it happy thoughts. I feed it happy imaginations. I feed it all the things because I want my mind to be a very fertile place to grow amazing ideas and abundancy beyond anything I can ever dream of. And I didn't realize that, those, like when they're calling me crazy, like, oh my gosh, how can you think? How can you just sit and think? Like, that's insane. I'm like, what a concept.
Right, right.
I'm like, I will take this type of insanity all day long. So I don't know where in the heck I was going with that, but it felt pertinent to share.
I don't know either, but I felt it in my soul just laying at rest. And so if I felt being laid at rest and not laid at rest like we're going, well, maybe my ego is laying at rest. I bet a bunch of people listening to this podcast, hearing you, their ego is being laid to rest for a moment.
Good. Yeah, because the ego it's a damaging soul. Like it's good times. Sometimes it's pertinent that we have it, but
Yeah.
other times it leads us astray. And I've let mine lead me astray so many times. I have sabotaged, I don't know how many friendships, businesses. Now I'm
You
just like, no, no, no. You
know
don't get the driver's seat anymore. You get the back seat, and it's not even the back passenger driver's seat. It's just back, trunkish area.
what?
So,
That there needs to be a club called the Insane Club. If you feel like you if you have wakened and you're a woman,
right,
you're a grandma, join the club.
right. So I have had an absolute blast chatting with you today, Elba. Any words of wisdom or thoughts or suggestions that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yes. And it's this. I hope you can see it. It's back.
Yeah, make it count.
Make it count.
That's
Make
true.
every day count. Don't lose any more time, money, energy. You can't get back what you lost. Grief.
No.
That's why we still have the grief, because we'll never get back what we lost. So make it count.
I love that. And how do you make it count in your world?
Through the power of gratitude, appreciate everything.
Yeah.
Everything
I would
from your
also like to add to that, choose it.
mm,
You must choose it.
yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I have loved it. I always love chatting with you. Let's be real about that. Um, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you got anything out of this whatsoever, please don't be shy and share this out to someone who you think might need it, and I should say, and hit the like and subscribe button. I'm watching you. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Release. All the links plus a few extras are posted in the show notes below. And if you think someone you know could benefit by listening to this episode, please share it with them. And as always, keep going, keep being, keep doing. You are amazing.